Hey, what's up guys? You're watching JL's Comics. I'm Jesse. Just watched a little movie that was released today on Netflix called Bright. So today we're going to answer the question that has been floating around the internet. Is Bright the worst movie of 2017? Stick around. So the 2017 movie Bright was just released today, December 22nd on Netflix, and I had a chance to watch it. I actually just finished watching it a few minutes ago. And if you've been watching the news or reading any articles in the film world, you've no doubt seen the tagline that Bright is the worst movie of 2017. Is that true? As we've seen with recent films such as Star Wars The Last Jedi, there is a large disparity between what the critics say and what the audience says, professional critics that is. So I'm going to give you my first impressions here. This will be spoiler free, and we'll kind of go from there. So this movie was actually written by Max Landis and reportedly had a budget in the range of $90 million, making it one of the most expensive projects to date for Netflix. And you know, despite all of the reviews, they do, from what I hear, have a sequel in the works. Reportedly, they've already committed to a part 2. I guess what they're saying is that this was supposed to be a start of a franchise for Netflix. So, you know, their own creator-owned, truly original franchise. You know, there's been so many great ones out there. They've been buying and licensing properties and content from others. I guess now they're trying to make their own. But this movie was 117 minutes, right at the just under 2-hour mark, hour and 57 minutes. And like I said, David Ayer, we'll talk about that in a second. It starred Will Smith as a character named Daryl Ward, LAPD veteran police officer, kind of heading towards retirement, he says, right near the beginning of the film. 5 more years and I'm done. He's teamed up with Joel Edgerton. His character's name is Nick Jacoby. Very reluctantly, all throughout the film, they remind us of that. They're not friends, but, you know, they're kind of thrown together there. And we had Lucy Fry playing Tika, which is a lady that they found later on. Noomi Rapace, actress that I really like, she played Layla. And some other neat cameos like Jay Hernandez, Margaret Cho, these other folks that were in the film. So what was it really? A lot of people have been saying things about Alien Nation, Lethal Weapon, Lord of the Rings, Hill Street Blues, kind of all like mixed together. And that's kind of what it was on the outset. So it was modern day Los Angeles, and it was very much the gritty realism that David Ayer is known for. I mean, he did like Training Day, End of Watch, Suicide Squad, a really great World War II period piece called Fury with Brad Pitt and a few others in it. Highly recommend that movie if you haven't seen it. But this very, very much felt like a David Ayer movie. In fact, I really got a lot of elements of End of Watch in it for me. So, you know, using practical effects and VFX. His character, Nick Jacoby, Joel Edgerton's character, I like that they used makeup and molding and, you know, practical VFX versus just straight CGI. It would have been very easy for them to just make all these characters CGI, but they didn't. And I like that. And it helped build that realism to it. So you have the cops are modern day, and you have all of these other races as well, all these other species. You have orcs, you have elves, there's dragons, there's fairies, there's some centaurs. A lot of them are background, like the fairies are like annoying bugs. He kills one with a broom outside of his house towards the beginning. But the humans are kind of like the middle class. They're like the working folks, you know. They're just there, you know. Those are kind of our focus, being that we're also humans. But then you had orcs, which were a lot of like the lower class sort of folks. And then elves, which were like the uber rich, the ruling class. They had all the money, all the fancy cars, all the fancy suits. And they were the ones with all the money. And that was kind of the class system that was built into this movie. We did get a little bit of kind of like the mythology and the backstory for what was happening here, but not really deep into it. I think that was one of the faults for the movie, was they did a good job about building out the world as it is today and just kind of making it like just that's how it is. But there was a lot of history there. Like there's a guy that we didn't really get to see called the Dark World, and they didn't dive into a lot of that that mythology with that, or like they're talking about like some things that happened 2,000 years ago, and they touched on it, but they didn't get like too deep into it. And with the orcs, they did try to draw a lot of parallels to racism, to things happening right now in our world. They touched on it there. They really did try to be meaningful with some of these things, but kind of ultimately sacrificed the depth that they really could have dove into that for the visual aspect of it. And I think that was one area where it really felt short. With the humans, you had like the gangsters. They'd be going into these areas for them. The cops, of course, which were made up of various races. Daryl, which was Will Smith, he was a human. Joel Edgerton was an orc, and he was actually the first orc to be on the police force, and he was teamed up very reluctantly with Will Smith's character. The media and everybody was kind of watching this because it was kind of the first pairing of these folks. And then you had the feds. There was a federal agency that focused strictly on magic. A lot of humans there, but they were led by an elf. This one guy who was an elf. So that was kind of the setup there. You have them out on patrol. You had Daryl and Nick out on patrol. And that was very much where you got some of the Hill Street Blues stuff. Some razzing in the police department, when they're up for roll call, when they're in the locker room. Then they go out on some calls. They meet up with like Jay Hernandez's character. There's some people out there in the world. There's an orc with like a broadsword out in the middle of the street, and they have to take him in, and they talk about, that they're part of a prophecy. And that kind of carries through a little bit with the story. And they have to find these things that there's a couple characters who are called Brights, and they're the ones who can use the magic, and they're looking for this thing called a magic wand, which is literally a magic wand, a blue glowing magic wand. Now, you have to be a Bright to be able to hold it and use it. If you are not and you hold it and use it, you basically just disintegrate. You're gone, and everybody around you. And we get to see that a couple times in this. So it was pretty neat that way. And it's just, once they find this thing, once they find Tika, which is the girl that's running away from some of her other elvish cult folks. The Inferni, who actually, in this, they say, destroyed the Illuminati a couple thousand years ago, and they took over that. So they're chasing after her because she has a wand. And from that, from the onset there, it's Daryl, Nick, and Tika on the run from the cops, from the feds, from some gangsters, you name it. And it's just nonstop from there. Some really cool action scenes. A little bit confusing, you could say, but that's kind of the nature of it. Whether they're in a club, they're in a street. There's a cool car chase, too, with some of the gangsters. And some things that are really unexpected to happen there. Like some people you don't think are going to die, and then, there's some twists, and then twist on the twist. So that was cool. So I like the action in it. There was a couple scenes where it was actually pretty funny as well, which I didn't expect from this movie at all. So there was one scene with a gunfight, and they're behind the car, and Will Smith's character asks Nick Jacoby, "Are you okay? Do you have any holes in you?" And he says, "No, just the ones that I'm born with." And then he goes, so to Will Smith, he says, "So how are your holes?" And then Daryl, Will Smith's character, goes, "Only you can make a gunfight weird or awkward." It was, I don't know, I thought it was funny, so that was cool. And I don't know, the movie ran a little bit long for me. They could have condensed some of the fight part of it. It was a little bit tiresome. And I was not overly happy with the wrap-up and the ending for it. It was a little, I guess maybe because they have already planned for a part 2, but it just didn't feel so wrapped up and just done like the way I would have wanted. So that's it. I liked it. I did. I enjoyed it. I watched the whole thing. I didn't get up. I didn't pause it. I didn't fast forward. I didn't fall asleep. But it wasn't the best movie of the year. I didn't love it. It was right in the middle for me. So as I always do here with my movie reviews, I'm going to give it the two scores. So the star rating, I give it a 2.5 out of 5, which is right in the middle. You know, wasn't great, wasn't horrible, just right up the middle. And to align with that for the CGC 10-point scale, or CBCS, it's going to be a 5.0 out of 10 for me. And that's it. But did you see the movie? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Let me know down below. Continue the conversation down there. And I will answer that question. This was not the worst movie of 2017. Okay, so there you go. Just, but watch it for yourself. If you really are curious about it, like any of these, this is my opinion. Watch it for yourself. Formulate your own opinion and your own thoughts on it. And then come back here and tell me what those were. This is Jesse here. This has been a review of the movie Bright. I'll see you next video.